watching the Scottish Football Zone with all the build-up and reactions.
There you go. Welcome back to the second show tonight on the Champions League. Was the third round qualifying, and it's finished Rangers 3, Viktoria Plzeň 0, and joined by Ethan and Robbie tonight to look back on the 90 minutes and. Well, Robbie, we said in the pre-show that Russell Martin had a lot of criticism after Saturday's performance and what he said to the media after the game, and they certainly came out with a lot of answers tonight.
Aye, well, I was saying to you that before we come on, Michael. I think a lot of the pundits in media of the weekend will probably feel a bit humbled after that. They spoke, and we rightly as well criticised Martin on this show, saying, he needs to answer now. He's asked a question, he needs to change the team, and he needs to drop these people with so-called big egos. And he done that tonight, and I thought the team that he put out sent a good message, sent a strong message. Obviously, players finally getting their rewards for playing in the right position. A player that I thought was excellent tonight, Max Aarons at right back. Thought he really created a lot in the game. Players like that got a good chance. Lyle Cameron in the midfield as well. So Russell Martin's answered the question, and it's about how Rangers progress now, because we know what they can do in Europe. We've seen that the last 3 games they've played, but it's all back into league business on Saturday.
Yeah, Ethan, as we said in the pre-show as well, that I basically said that we'll come back on at 10 o'clock with the same questions, but not enough answers. And basically, it was opposite tonight. We got a lot of answers, and I think Russell Martin will be, as we say in the West of Scotland, sticking his 2 fingers up to a lot of people tonight.
Yeah, he will be, because he's proved anyone that was questioning his sort of minerals to really act on what he said on Saturday evening. He obviously questioned a lot of the players' mentalities, spoke about ego. We've all seen what he said, and the 4 changes he made were big ones. I think Dessos was brilliant tonight, and sort of showing why he's the best striker at Rangers and why he was the top scorer last season. I thought Lyle Cameron obviously came in for Raskin, Rangers' best player last season. Russell Martin not afraid to drop him. He did, and Lyle Cameron took his opportunity with both hands. I thought he was brilliant, especially in the first half. He was making really positive runs, some really good progressive passing, and yeah, as well, Max Aarons, as Robbie touched on, I thought he had a positive game. He grew into it. He just looked a lot more comfortable, and you would have expected that because he's playing in his favoured position. And I think a lot of the time Rangers turned to him to kind of progress the ball out of the back 4, and he had the ball in that sort of Tavernier space in the sort of midfield in the right-hand side. I don't know if he performed at a level that's going to keep James Tavernier out of the team, because obviously James Tavernier is the club captain. You expect him to going to get minutes, but he'll only get better if he's playing in his natural position. I think Rangers were very good tonight compared to the other 3 performances. A massive step up, and that's what Russell Martin was looking for. I don't think it was a perfect performance by any means, but considering the sort of aftermath of Saturday, it's a massive result. 3 goals. You would have to have Rangers through to the playoff round now, and yeah, just a massive result for them. Oliver Antman looked very good as well on his debut. Obviously, I'd imagine he's coming in with not much prep, so well done to him, and you can see why he led the Eredivisie in assists last season.
By the way, good before we go on, guys, a message to any of the Premiership clubs. If you're a sub at the weekend, do not kick the ball. I don't know about you guys, but the ref must have been a bit bored during that game actually, because I never actually saw it in real time. I saw the replay and I thought, are you having a joke? I mean, one of the guys up in the stand, he basically flung away his pie, so I was waiting for him to get arrested for that offence as well. I mean, Robbie, what's the game coming to?
I know, the referee must have been a bit bored. We spoke earlier weekend about referees not having much controversy earlier weekend. Well, there's certainly a bit in this game you've got to say, but I thought in terms of on the pitch, also you're meant to be jokes there, but on the pitch, I think the referee dealt the game pretty much the best way you could. In terms of the 90 minutes, I don't think he had much big decisions to make, and I think the ones he did, they probably didn't fall on, to be honest.
I think the penalty might have been a bit soft, but in defence, I think once he gives it, it's one of those ones where it's enough of a penalty that it's not going to be overturned. Same as it was, if it wasn't given, I don't think it would be overturned, and that's the way that I like it. I think VAR sometimes gets involved when it doesn't need to, and I don't think it needed to get involved here because although Vidra will feel hard done by, he does kind of step across Ant-Man and foul him, and Dessers obviously steps up well and converts it well. But Ant-Man, Gassama and Dessers, I mean, the difference from that in that front three from, Gassama obviously started the last two games, but Gassama, Danilo and Kieran Dowell, it's night and day. It really is. And to be fair, I don't think Rangers created a lot of chances, but they created enough chances. They were clinical. They took their chances and they kept the ball, is something that they've really struggled to do in the opening three games. Keep the ball off the other team, work it out from the back, and Viktoria Plzeň just couldn't really get near them. They never looked like causing Rangers any problems at all. I thought it would be more of a difficult game for Rangers. I don't know if maybe underestimated Rangers or overestimated Viktoria Plzeň, probably a bit of both, but they're not, I don't think, even as close a team to Panathinaikos, and Rangers have got past that hurdle pretty easily in the end, although not playing their best, and they do look like they're going to go over this one as well. But it's all about building confidence, and as Robbie said, it's all about taking it into the domestic action now, because same as always, that's been the problem thus far this season.
I'd like to know how that game that Michael done at the weekend would have went if you had Ant-Man in the team and he maybe put Max Aarons at right back or brought in Cameron. All these things that would be interesting to know, because I think if you put Ant-Man in that Motherwell game, it's a completely different complex. I think he did show that much of a difference tonight in this game as well. I thought he was excellent on his debut. As Ethan mentioned earlier, he couldn't have had too much time prepare for this game, but he get flung in. One, it shows how much Russell Martin has faith in him, but two, how much faith he doesn't really have in Kieran Dowell. That's another, that's a game where, yes, Dowell's been flung into the last three, but he's maybe been forced to be flung into the last three, so I wonder what that tells you maybe about what Martin really thinks about Dowell.
Yeah, and Dowell doesn't even get on the pitch tonight. The other three taken out do. Danilo did get on the pitch, didn't he? I'm not imagining that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah. And then obviously James Tavernier comes on when Max Aarons gets that knock, and Raskin come on as well, even though he picked up that stupid yellow card in the first half while on the bench. But yeah, I think the really surprised performer. I think I did look into Oliver Ant-Man a bit, and I did see that he did look like a really good player that would be able to kind of handle himself at Rangers, but I didn't expect Lyle Cameron, I know obviously a good player from Dundee, but I didn't expect him to really grab the game like he did tonight. I thought he was maybe the best out of that midfield three, and when you've got Joe Rothwell, who's an experienced Premier League player, and you've got Mohamed Diamande, who at times is Rangers' best player, I don't think he does it consistently enough still. I think if Mohamed Diamande was more consistent, he would be an excellent player, and he shows at his best points that he is a great player. But I think that's what the Rangers fans would say. He just doesn't show it often enough. But he was okay tonight. Nearly scored as well. He hit the bar, I think, in the second half. But no, Lyle Cameron was another standout for me, and I thought Nasser Giga was very good as well. And yeah, it's all coming together for Rangers. But we've we can sit here and say that, but then we need to see what they do on Saturday against Saturday, is it?
Yeah,
Saturday night against Dundee.
Dundee, yeah. And I suppose all the praise must go to Rangers tonight. I mean, we could be unfair of me to say, guys, that the opposition wasn't up to much. But in saying that, you've got to give Rangers credit. How they bounced back for Saturday against Motherwell, Robbie. I think it was a very professional performance as well.
Aye, and I think it had to be a professional and good performance as well. You know, Rangers can rock out of this game and come out of it, and we're on here at 10 o'clock with anything other than a win. You know, a comfortable one at that as well. There was already a slight bit of pressure put on Martin's shoulders with the way Saturday went and what he said after the game as well. So, you know, this had to be a good performance for Rangers. And you're right, look, no disrespect to Poulsen, but they really did not show much threat at all in the 90 minutes. One player, I'm not going to pretend I know the full 11 of Poulsen, but I know Martin Vidra, and I know he's a pretty handy player up front, and I know he's a guy that can cause you problems, but he also didn't do much in the game. So, you know, it was a quiet night for them, but look, that's taking absolutely nothing away for Rangers. As you said, I thought they were professional. I thought they were good. I think, as Ethan mentioned with the jigger, I think that was probably the most comfortable we've seen the back four so far, which is obviously a positive Martin can take into league business on Saturday. But it was a very good professional performance for Rangers.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think Viktoria Plzeň really laid a glove on Rangers, and yeah, they weren't. That's what I said actually to one of my friends who's a Rangers fan during the game, the first half, and I was like, Viktoria Plzeň aren't up to much at all. They didn't really press Rangers that well. They didn't have really much quality on the ball either. They just never really looked like threatening. I don't know. I think I mentioned at the pre-show they just sold their best player, Pavel Schultz, to Lyon for €7.5 million. They had a player suspended from the red card they got against Servette, and their first choice goalkeeper, Martin Jedlicka, is injured. That's why the Florian Weigl, the 6'9" Austrian goalkeeper, was in goals. But that's three players. They just didn't even get close to Rangers at all. And yeah, it was surprising. I thought they would be better than that. But again, take nothing away from Rangers. They controlled the game from minute 1 to 90. I think the last half an hour, the game became a wee bit, they kind of died down a little bit, Rangers, but that's only natural when you go 3 ahead and you're sitting comfortable in the tie. But yeah, I was still never worried about the Viktoria Plzeň doing anything really. And yeah, it's a real statement from Rangers, and Russell Martin, of course, with the subs or the changes coming in and making a positive impact. And it'll be interesting to see what team he fields at the weekend against Dundee, and then for the return leg in Plzeň.
I think you can make comparisons to Celtic v St at the weekend. If you look at the way both teams set up, Plzeň obviously set up with a back three, 2 wing backs, with Rangers set up with a 4-3-3 like Celtic did. The only difference is I thought Rangers done really well at breaking down the back five, specifically with the wingers, with Gassama and Antman. I thought they were brilliant, really cutting through that defence a lot of the time. You look at the first and third goal and how they break down that defence, it's night and day compared to maybe what we've seen with Celtic at the weekend or what Celtic attempted to try and do. So I think if you're Plzeň, you're probably disappointed you didn't make it more interesting and more a fight. With a back three, you almost try and sit in deep and create problems for Rangers, but they never really done that. They just kind of let Rangers work their way through them with a bit of ease, we've got to say. So that's taking nothing away for Rangers, but because as I mentioned there, I thought the wingers were absolutely superb. I thought the midfield was brilliant as well. So it was a good day for Rangers.
Yeah, Robbie, is that you try to say that St Mirren would beat Viktoria Plzeň?
Nah, not at all. Although with man drawn up front, you never know. No, but I do think that is when these teams come to Ibrox and in Europe and in the league, you then need to be so tight defensively. You need to try and stop the Rangers attacking. I don't think it's something Plzeň done enough for the 90 minutes, to be honest.
No, I would agree. I think there was it was interesting that you made that point. I thought there was similarities between the two matches, in the sense that obviously Celtic and Rangers try to dominate possession. I don't know if I've got Rangers possession here, 56%. I think that a lot of that would have been, a lot of Plzeň's would have been in the second half. But yeah, I think and at times in the first half and at times in the game, Rangers moved the ball too slowly and it was too easy for Plzeň, but when they sped it up, Viktoria Plzeň couldn't really keep up with them. And that was something that I think Celtic never really done at the weekend. They never really got out of second gear against St Mirren, and all credit to St Mirren, of course, but I don't think Celtic made it as difficult for them as they could do. But yeah, Rangers 3-0 up. I mean, I think the fans would have bit your hand off for that before the game. So yeah, and Dede Gassama is looking like a brilliant signing.
I think as well, Russell Martin has got a bit of a dilemma on his hands, as Ethan was saying there, about do they change the team on Saturday, but also I think that he's got to go with a strong team next Tuesday night. Rangers scored an early goal. The tie's basically over. The tie's over at the moment, but I think they'll be looking for one more goal, Robbie, as well. And then you'll see changes coming up, because obviously I think it's a week after that they've got the playoff tie to get into the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, like my prediction is I think it will change the team on Saturday. I don't think it will be too weakened, because one thing I think, and look, obviously we don't know what Martin's seen in training since he got into the job, but one thing I can say is if you look at some of the team lineup that maybe put it in pre-season, maybe early in the Champions League game, I think he quickly realised, I don't want to sound disrespectful and say how weak, but I think he knows that his best players need to be playing in order to put in good performances. That's what I'll say. I think that's a better way to word it than maybe a weaker team, but I think he needs to always have strong options there, because if you start maybe rotating a few players out and putting on players that maybe don't play or maybe aren't as good as some of the first teamers, then you can start to see problems, and it's something that you'll need to try and keep up with all season. You need to keep consistent teams and no rotate too much. But look, it's still very early in the campaign. It wouldn't surprise me if the team sheet came out on Saturday and it is very much the same team. But I don't suspect it will be. I think the likes of Tavernier will probably play on Saturday in league business and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if Raskin comes back into the mix as well. So we'll see what happens, but I do suspect there'll be a couple of changes.
Yeah, but I think so. I think there will be a couple of changes, but I think he might look at it at the point of view that Dundee becomes more important than the second leg, because Rangers are already 3-0 up. So maybe he can go over there, and I know the tie's not completely done, but I mean, it'd be very hard to imagine what we've seen tonight, Viktoria Plzeň turn around a 3-0 deficit. So there's players there that haven't really played that much in that Rangers squad. I mean, we're still not really seeing Emmanuel Fernandez yet at all, and they spent a good amount of money on him. I think that's an area where Rangers probably need another central defender. I think they need another left back, and then maybe another winger. But that's if they're keeping everyone at the moment. Obviously, Dessers is linked with a move away, and he was actually speaking to the BBC after the game. I don't know if any of you've seen it. And they asked him about if the sort of Russell Martin's comments that for Park gave him motivation, and I'll just quote what he said: "No, not really. You need to have this motivation always." I think he said it's easy to have it in the European games, the old firm games, but you need to have it every league game, because there's no easy games in the SPFL. So we need to pick up our level there as well.
There you go, Ethan. Your mate's happy tonight. Alex is 3-0 your beauty as well. And he goes on to say, for Alan, let me get this comment up here. It says, for Alan was absolutely good tonight. Surprised he's decent in the position. So, yeah, good night for Alex and good night for Rangers, Ethan.
Yeah, and I would agree. I thought Max Aarons definitely looked a lot more comfortable there. I've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. I think it will need more to keep James Tavernier out of the team, because I think we undermine the fact sometimes that James Tavernier does have still have qualities that can be of use to Rangers outside of him being the captain. So. Yeah, and that's what you need. You need competition for places, and Russell Martin's shown that there's players that can come in that you maybe didn't expect that can compete for places, like your Lyle Camerons and your Max Aarons.
I'm going to put my neck on the line here, Rob, and say that Racing won't be a stubborn Saturday. But I've used that joke too many times now, so I'm going to skip over that. I hope Alex thinks that's funny as well. That was especially for you. But yeah, I mean, I would be interested to see what the team will be in Saturday and then next kind of Tuesday night. But again, it's all right. As we said tonight, and we'll probably say it again on Friday or whatever. But it's all right for Rangers to win out, comfortable winners tonight. But it's all about the next game that they play against Dundee on Saturday.
Aye, and it will be interesting just to ask you guys a question as well, because we spoke there about maybe we'll be a rotated team, but I'm looking at that 11 tonight, and if I'm any of the players, I'm probably disappointed if I'm getting rotated at the team at the weekend. Now I know obviously it's difficult for a football player to play every game, but if I'm any of the players and I look at Cameron and I look at Aaron's playing at right back, and I know he could switch back out at the left, but I just don't see that. I don't see how that works in my opinion. But I do look at players a lot, and if I'm one of them, I'm probably disheartened if I'm getting rotated at the thing. I'm probably going to go again in the league and try and make what happened at Motherwell right against Dundee.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, and then that's what it's about. That's what they need. They need competition for places, players fighting with each other for positions, because that's ultimately what makes a good team when they're pushing each other. And I think too many players in that Rangers squad have been too comfy in their positions for years gone past now, and you probably know who I'm referring to. And that's why Russell Martin's brought in players to compete and take their places when they're not delivering the standards that he's set.
Yeah, Ethan's right there about if players are disappointed because they're not playing on Saturday. I think that's a healthy debate to have, Robbie, because obviously they're like that. Well, I want to play on Saturday and I want to play every game for this brilliant club and all the rest of it. But healthy competition kind of like helps and breeds confidence in the squad. And I suppose like the more times that you perform well and you win games, the easier. I'm not saying that easy it will become, but I mean, it's one of these ones. Losing is a habit, but winning is a habit as well.
Yeah, and as I say, it'll be a good headache for Russell Martin to have ahead of Saturday. When he picks for his team. That you're starting to slowly see. I feel, and I know obviously they dropped points at the weekend, but you're starting to slowly see an atmosphere switch at Ibrox. With the new players that have come in. If you look at that Panathinaikos win, I know they won the game at Ibrox, but they won it convincing. And if you speak to Rangers fans after the game, and I spoke to a few, they still weren't too happy with the way things were gone. They were a bit disappointed with the performance overall, despite getting the result. But if you look at this match, and I've spoken to a few before we come on, and they seem very positive with the performance. They seem positive with the signings that have been made. Look at what Gassama's done. I believe he's averaging a goal every 25 minutes in the Champions League since he came to Ibrox. And I think he's 4 goals in 3 games, and he only started one of them. So, the players like that are impressing. Antman's come in his debut. He's impressed. Leo Cameron in the midfield. Michael, you must be the happiest man with your thoughts on, the youth players getting into the teams. You must be buzzing for a wee Leo. But you're just looking at the pitch now, and I feel like in the stands, and you're hearing the Rangers fans chanting the songs for 5-10 minutes, and it just seems a real positive place now. It seems like it's maybe flipping, and they're starting to back the team a bit more and feel a bit more positive. I feel like that's something anyway I took away for the game, even I don't know about you.
Yeah, I would agree. This was the first game that you've seen a step in the right direction since Russell Martin's been the manager. Because although the results were there against Panathinaikos, I think we can agree that the performances weren't. Obviously, poor performance and result of the weekend against Motherwell, but tonight was solid. Rangers were the best team on the pitch. They dominated the game, never looked like really conceding a goal. And yeah, that's what Rangers expect, and they can only hopefully for them take that confidence into the weekend, where they'll go back to being massive favourites, overwhelming favourites to win the game. It'll be interesting to see who he rotates in, because there's still players that we haven't really seen yet. I mentioned, I'm just looking at the squad now. Manuel Fernandez, one of them, not really got any minutes. Connor Barron's not started any games. He could maybe come in. Nadeem Barami looked good in pre-season. Bailey Rice, I think he might be. Yeah, Bailey Rice. Yeah, he's not featured. I thought it says he's suspended here, but I don't know what that is about. And then you've still got Taylor Osgaard, who's obviously injured. He's still to come back. Same with Hamza Agaman. You've got Mikey Moore, who's wasn't registered tonight, but I imagine he'll be able to play at the weekend. Oscar Cortez hasn't really been able to start a match. So you've still got a lot of players to sort of see where they're at. I think should probably get Kieran Dowell starting again. No, I'm only joking. But yeah, you've got a big squad there, and I think Rangers are a few signings away from, if the squad's fit, and having a really competitive squad, and that's what they need to compete on all fronts.
I think as well with that squad, with the names that you round off, but Ethan, it's important that it's a home game on Saturday as well, because if it was an away game, then it's a bit iffy. It's a tight park and all the rest of it. But because it's a home game, it could bleed the players that you mentioned there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The only thing that I'm thinking, looking at Rangers fixtures, is that obviously before the second leg, they've got Dundee at home, as we mentioned, at the weekend. But after the second leg, they've got Alloa Athletic at home, and no disrespect to Alloa, 5 wins from 5 so far this season in the Premier Sports Cup and the League One. But you would be expecting Rangers can throw in some players that haven't had many minutes and still should be able to get the job done there. So that would be one I would look to see some of those players that I mentioned. But it'll be interesting to see what he does at the weekend, because he's made the starting 11 such an interesting thing. Who's dropped, who's on the bench, who's not playing, because of his comments, and it's set a real precedent going forward for Rangers, and it obviously worked out brilliantly tonight. We'll have to see if that carries into the league at the weekend.
I think this is already a very, very, very... I don't think it can be said enough how important this game is for Russell Martin. Now, I know everybody online in the build-up to this game is going to be going, it's Stephen Presley's Dundee, and if you look at the game against Hibs, this and that, and I know it's not been a great start for Presley, and if you just watch the highlights against Hibs, it wasn't great. But it's still a very big game for Rangers. They can't undermine how important this is. They need to go out and get the job done here. And let's be honest, if you're a Rangers fan, you're going to be wanting the job done convincingly as well. You're not just going to want a 1-0 or 2-0 or a scrape win. You're going to want to see goals. You're going to want to see 3 or 4 in this game. So it's a very important game for Russell Martin.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with you. And the fact that everyone's talking about Dundee being so poor and such favourites to be relegated probably doesn't help Rangers going off the pass, because it's not been a problem of not sort of going up against teams that people are talking about as being good. It's been more a problem of the teams that they should be beating when the expectation's really on them, and it will really be on them at the weekend. There should be no reason why Rangers can't beat Dundee. I can't see Dundee getting anything from the game at the moment, but Rangers have surprised us many times in the past, so we don't know. But yeah, it would be a massive step for Russell Martin, and every step at this stage of his tenure is massive. And there's no reason why. I know they've got St Mirren away. Robbie, you might have something else to say on this, but I think up until they play Celtic at Ibrox at the end of August, they should be winning every game. Well, actually, they've got probably Champions League matches against RB Salzburg or Club Brugge, so maybe not the ones, but domestically, certainly, they should be winning every game. So yeah.
100%. No, they should win every game between now and Celtic, at least domestically, like you said. I know, obviously, last season we get the better record there, Rangers, but that's been at a time where, let's be honest, Rangers were going through a bit of a crisis in terms of their managerial appointments and the way they were playing and stuff like that. it's a new look Rangers team. Of course, as a Salmon fan, I go into every game expecting to win, but realistically, Rangers are playing with that intensity, and I'm looking at their wingers after the night, and I'm seeing a real positive influence on that team just for them and alone. You look at the third goal that Rangers scored, absolutely wonderful bit of play down the right hand side to get Brett Poulsen open. So, Russell Martin should have expectations, and the expectation should be until they face up against Celtic, they need to be winning every game. It's as simple as that. There can be no, it feels a bit, I feel harsh maybe saying it this early, but there can be no more points dropped for Rangers now. It needs to be wins right through now.
Yeah, the chase is on already. And Rangers, as you said, can't afford to make any errors, and they need to arrive into that game and no more than 2 points behind Celtic, and then they'll have that confidence that in front of a packed Ibrox that they can beat Celtic regardless of what Celtic have done in the time in between now and then.
I'm just putting out there that Jonathan Smith, watching on YouTube, cheers for watching it. He says, I can see Lyle Cameron getting booed at the weekend. But also I can see Lyle Cameron scoring a goal against Dundee, because how many times has that happened of any team in Scotland that they come up against the old team and score a goal?
Yeah,
well, sorry, Fernando, you go.
No, I was just going to say there's been a lot of players went up against their old team already this season. Jamie Brandon, Max Striek, Josh Mulligan. None of them managed to score, mind you. And someone who, in very similar circumstance to Lyle Cameron last season, Luke McCowan, who obviously left Dundee to go to Celtic, managed to score against Dundee at Dens last season. I think there will probably be boos from the section of Dundee fans at Ibrox, and there'll probably be quite a lot of boos when he goes to Dens, and I don't know if that'll be to do with whatever the result finishes, because obviously there was boos at Dens at the weekend, so yeah, they're booing a lot already, so I would agree with Jonathan there.
No disrespect to Dundee fans going to Ibrox, but I'm sure Cameron will probably hear more cheers than they will boos, I imagine, when he gets on the ball. I think fans will probably rally behind him in the home end anyway, but I feel like Cameron, and it's been such an interesting conversation, because obviously, I don't know, I'm assuming you guys have heard what he said and the interview that he done. So obviously Dundee fans are already a bit wary of what he said, but he is just a good player, and I suspect he will put in a good performance at the weekend. And I don't think he'll let it affect him too much. What I would say is he's probably glad it's at Ibrox rather than Dens Park, for the first game against Dundee, because they'll get the boos at the way, and maybe when they go to Dens Park eventually it will maybe calm down a bit, I don't know, but I'm sure he'll be fine ahead of the weekend. I don't see there maybe being any problems with his performance.
I don't think they'll ever calm down, Robbie, but I like your optimism there.
Well, the Scottish football fans, we never calm down really, do we?
But I think this Lyle Cameron's performance tonight shines a light on Scotland and their midfielders. They've just got so many quality midfielders, and it'll be even difficult for him to get in the squad. That the squad has got that many talented players in it. Luke McCowan, I thought, really had a good first season at Celtic, coming from Dundee, and he didn't even get into the national team. So if we could sort of distribute our midfield options or midfield quality across the 11, then we would be probably on for winning the World Cup, but unfortunately that's not the case.
Just to not to sidetrack too much, but it's going to be interesting watching Hibs Grant Hanley next to Rangers John Souttar in the next Scotland squad. I can't wait to see that squad announcement.
Yeah,
that's one not to be missed, or maybe he will miss it. I don't know.
He'll probably be the only Hibs player represented. No Josh Mulligan, no Kieran Bowie, or anyone else at Hibs. The Scottish is playing well. Just Grant Hanley.
Yeah, I think he's got a season ticket for Steve. How's that? I need to move on from that because I can say a few things, but I can't. Yeah, so as I say, 3-0 to Rangers, Robbie very comfortable, but the next game is important. And I mean, I think if you ask, I think if you ask anybody at Rangers, it's like job done. Let's focus now on Saturday, and then next Tuesday will take care of itself.
Aye, but something we've not really touched on yet, Michael, and something that if I was a Rangers fan, I'd be very impressed with, it's the first and third goal. How excellently played are they? I mean, you go to the first, you look at Cyril Dessers up front, a lovely bit of hold-up play, a brilliant run through for Gisama. You know, originally when I thought he played the ball to Dessers, there was no way he was going to be able to make a run into the box. You know, I thought at the time Paulson had him pretty much nailed in to stay where he was, but he somehow gets through. Another good ball for Dessers back to him, and it's a lovely composed finish. Then you look at the third goal, and this is why I'm so tossing and turning about if Tavernier's going to come back in Saturday, because Max Aaron's a wonderful ball through to Ant-Man on the right hand side. Ant-Man uses his skill, puts in a lovely ball, and it's another good finish. So, you know, if I'm a Rangers fan, yes, it's probably job done, but I'm a bit optimistic with these goals. You know, how many times have we watched Rangers wingers over the last 2 years? No day stuff like that. You know, they're very, I don't know the right word to describe them. You know, they're not very enthusiastic. You know, they don't cut in enough. They sort of tend to go backwards more than they're going forwards. But as soon as Gisama and Ant-Man get the ball tonight, they were just looking to cut right through that defence, and I think it's a positive change that Rangers fans haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, no, I think I'd be interested to see if Alex is still watching this, and they're still watching this, so that's good. The Tavernier, I think for me, and this is only a personal opinion, but Rangers were very comfortable tonight. Okay, their opposition wasn't brilliant, but I think Tavernier, again, maybe he's a wee bit different because he's still the captain, but I think that in these kind of games, you can't afford to start him because he's prone to a mistake or two. I mean, you saw that on Saturday against Motherwell, or like he scored a goal, but I think was it the second half or later on in the first half, he made a mistake, but playing in European football, it's going up like 2 levels, and if Rangers wants to get to the Champions League and then qualify out the League Six, and I don't think they can afford to start many games. So I think he'll be the sub for most of the games coming up. I'm sorry you're a big Tavernier fan, Alex, but you know.
Ethan, just to ask on Michael's point there, it's interesting, right? Because I look at Tavernier and I think he's got a lot of good qualities, and I think he can bring a lot to the table. But if I'm looking at a game like Saturday, where you know it's going to be hard to break down a Dundee team, and any game going forward, and I think Tavernier will naturally come into the squad. I'm not saying he's never going to get in a game because that'd be wild for me to say. But I'm looking at these moments where you need a Max Sarrans type ball that he played to Ant-Man for the third goal. Am I really trusting James Tavernier to make that type of ball? I don't know if he would make that type of ball in the position, especially tonight against Paulson, that Aaron's did.
Yeah, possibly not. I think I'm not sure though. Tavernier, I think his best attributes are probably on the ball or going forward. Yeah, I would agree with what Alex says. I think it's Aaron's place to lose at the moment, and that's the way it should be. No matter if you're the captain, legend of the club, one time you've got to go, and if there's a better player in your possession, then they should play ahead of you until as such a time where they're not. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see that one, because I think there was a point. There was a point sort of last season, I think, for like a couple of weeks where it was looking like maybe James Tavernier was going to be out of the team and whatever, but then he came back in. He obviously starts this season again. But now that I think when Russell Martin gets a left back in that's he really likes, because I think he's made it pretty clear he's not the biggest fan of Jeffrey so far, although he played him tonight and he looked okay. I think when he gets a solid left back in that he trusts to start in big European fixtures, then that player will start at left back and Max Aarons will start at right back. And I think the real thing for Russell Martin now is he needs to get the best 11 possible. He needs to start playing them. He needs to get them fit and up to scratch in a fortnight's time, because that's when they're going to have their biggest game of the season, ultimately, financially, biggest game of the season. The two games against, I think it'll be Club Brugge. I just think they're the better team out of the two, and I think they'll be a really tough task for Rangers, but you never know if Rangers play at their best, and he has the best sort of team in place to play against them, then you never know, but he needs to start organising that quick, because it's only a fortnight away from the first leg.
I think Ethan makes a good point there, Robbie, because if Rangers are playing Champions League football or European football till Christmas or the New Year, Russell Martin can't afford to chop and change the team. He's got to stick with that system, and going forward, maybe Arrow, obviously, because it's Arrow and it's a home and all the rest of it, but he can't afford to change it too much, because obviously it's got European football, Celtic coming up, Dundee and Saturday as well.
Aye, you're right. He can't afford to chop and change the team all the time. And I was just reading one of his quotes there after the game, and he was very vocal that he's going to need to use everybody. That he didn't really like the term "dropped out" the team. He says he doesn't really see it as that. He says everybody's going to be used one way or another, which is right, because I think personally they'll qualify for the Champions League. I think you're going to need these players to I think it could be games where you're going to need Cameron to start and maybe Raskin comes in or vice versa. And, it's good to utilise your whole squad. And it just sort of expand on that a bit, not really too far ahead, but even something that interests me with this game. And again, we've mentioned it multiple times how good the wingers were. And I'm looking at Celtic and the business they've got the new and the squad they've got. If I'm a Rangers fan, I'm excited for that man and Gassama to come up against that Celtic defence. I think if we've learned something, I know obviously you've got Tierney in there as an option, but I'm looking at somebody like Liam Scales who had to go out of left back on the game on Saturday, and obviously he might not be in the door, but might not be an option at left back. They could have somebody else in the door come the old firm. But I'm looking right now, and if I'm a Rangers fan, I'm looking forward to these type of games, because Rangers now look like they can win the winger battles against the full-backs. It looks like they can now exploit people's defences against the likes of Celtic and when they go into Europe fully.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Rangers had Celtic's number even last season, and probably one of their worst seasons recently. I know that the Rangers seasons haven't been, filled with trophies and whatever, but last season in the league certainly it was really poor. But they still managed to turn up against Celtic and beat Celtic and give Celtic a really tough time of it. Obviously they had Cherny then, who was obviously really good, but I think they've replaced him well with Oliver Antman. He looks like a really good player. He's just in the door and he's just been flung into the starting 11 and he's turned in a really good performance. Gassama, obviously, he looks like a live wire that's going to cause problems for defenders. I think Celtic should have another left back in by then, but I think Kieran Tierney, in an ideal world for Celtic, they'll have Kieran Tierney and Alistair Johnston there. But I think another problem is Celtic's wingers. They don't have wingers of that quality at the moment. Obviously, I would still probably lean towards saying Dyson Maeders, probably the best winger in the league at the moment. But, as a second option, when Jota's injured, there's no one of Gassama or Antman's quality at the minute, and Celtic need to address that before the window shuts.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's going to be a interesting game in a few weeks as well, because Celtic fans, speaking to Ethan, and a lot of Celtic fans are very frustrated with the transfer window at the moment, whereas Rangers got their business done, would you say, early in the window, and there's still time. I think it's the 1st of September that the window shuts as well. So, I mean, plenty of time as well, as well. But yeah, I mean, if Russell Martin gets into the Champions League and beats Rangers, I think more and more fans will come on side and support him. Obviously, you've got to support him at the moment, Ethan, because he's your manager, and if he wasn't your choice, well, tough. He's in the job, you've still got to support him. But I do think if he gets Rangers to the Champions League and beats Celtic, and I think it's important how that game's at Ibrox as well, because if it's at Parkhead and it took a bit iffy, and if he gets a point, but it's at Ibrox, so anything could happen. But I think if he wins these two kind of things, I think he'll win more fans over.
Yeah, I definitely. I think Rangers. I'm not expecting. I wouldn't put it on that. I know Rangers fans will, because obviously the size of Rangers as a club, their expectations, but I don't think it's fair this early to expect Russell Martin to qualify for the Champions League, because I just think Club Brugge are just a team that are really, really solid. They've been in the Champions League 6 of the last 7 seasons. And this is no disrespect to FC Salzburg. I think they're a quality team as well. I just think Club Brugge will beat them over 2 legs. And Club Brugge have made it to the knockout rounds of the Champions League in the last 2 seasons. So I think it's unfair to expect him to get to the Champions League, but that's not saying that if he doesn't get a few more bodies in, gets the team up to speed, and they can't have a good go at Club Brugge and really have a go at it. And I think if he gets Rangers to the Champions League, then he should have the keys to Ibrox, because I really do think that would be a remarkable achievement and start to his Rangers tenure. And then if Rangers do that, that's £40 million in the door. And I think Rangers, the Rangers board will give him back a lot of that to go and spend, because that's where that's what Rangers need to do. They need to take risks. They need to spend a lot of money, because ultimately I think the squad is still a little bit behind Celtic's. But if you get a good few real quality Champions League quality players in there, then they could win the league off the support of that money. And you've also got to look at it who Celtic have got in their playoff, and you're imagining that Celtic are going to get that money. So and it's so massive for both clubs. So I think Russell Martin will be back to the hill by the club, and obviously the fans as well, if he can get them into the Champions League. And even if he can't, I think if he starts them, he puts them on a winning run from now on to the first derby and gets a positive result there, then he would definitely have the fans on side, because if you look at I think I've referred to him a few times since we spoke about Russell Martin, but how Ange Postecoglou started his league season and Champions League season. He got knocked out of the Champions League by Midtjylland in extra time. Lost his first 3 league away games against Hearts, Livingston and Rangers. And then obviously you know the rest. So I think the Rangers fans have got to be patient. I think the Rangers hierarchy and owners will be patient. And I think Russell Martin has shown that he's, based off tonight and possibly his comments on Saturday, that he's the right man to take Rangers forward at the moment.
Yeah,
By the way, that game, sorry, Robbie, that game between Club Brugge and Salzburg is tomorrow night. That's a 6 o'clock kickoff as well. Sorry, Robbie.
No, I was just going to say it is so interesting because you're right, Ethan. There shouldn't be expectation on it all to go well in the Champions League for Rangers straight away. Martin should have time to build, but unfortunately for him, he's in probably one of the biggest jobs in the world in terms of, what the fans expect of you. The bucket list, I suppose, for fans will be Champions League. Right, brilliant, we can celebrate getting there, but then it's you need to win the League Cup, then you need to beat Celtic, then you need to beat Celtic all the games, then you need to win the league, win the Scottish Cup, and it's just it's a big checklist for Martin. But if you're right, if he's chipping away at it slowly, it's only a positive for Rangers. And you're right, the day into game time, I'm sure the new board and the hierarchy at the club will be giving them more time than fans will. If let's just say Rangers don't win the League Cup, I don't think there's going to be any sort of panic buttons pushed. But all these sort of things by the fans' point of view anyway are so important to the club, because it has been a tough few years without any real sign of consistently winning trophies.
Yeah, I think obviously I'm not looking at it. If I'm looking at it from a sort of a business standpoint and maybe a sort of ownership club standpoint, not a Rangers fan standpoint, I think a successful season for Russell Martin would be to do well in the Europa League. Obviously, if they get the Champions League, excellent. But do well in the Europa League. If you can't win the league, be very close behind Celtic. Very close, I mean 5 points or less, and win a cup, win at least one cup. I think, and show that there's progress. Show that domestically you're consistent, and that you're a few players away from winning the league. And then I think you'll be back to again next summer, and then they'll go for it again, because not every manager wins the league in their first season. It is a very difficult thing to do. Obviously, it's difficult if you're. Not any Rangers manager as of late's won it in their first season. Obviously, Celtic is different because they've had the financial power. But yeah, I think the Russell Martin's got a tough job in his hands. But a real statement tonight, and it's really looking like Rangers are going in the right direction.
Yeah, and just to say as well, I mean, obviously you're going to be judged on beating Celtic. That is ultimately what the fans want to see. And let's be honest, Rangers have had a good record there the past sort of season or so of beating Celtic. So if I'm Russell Martin and I'm the board and certainly the fans, my thing is now we need to go and beat these clubs that we couldn't beat last season. Rangers can never be beaten after sitting on the home. That should absolutely never happen. They shouldn't be losing to these teams at home or dropping silly points away. It's something that Russell Martin will need to tighten the screw on, and I think he will, by the way. Just I know the drop points at the weekend there, but this is just a very exciting team. This is a team that seems like it knows how to break these type of teams down, and I think they will only get better. Michael, you mentioned earlier there's still a month for the window, so this might not even finish Rangers squad by the time we get to the end of the window. They could have more bodies in, so we'll need to see how it goes. But again, after tonight, it is such a huge step in the right direction for Rangers.
I think as well, guys, that I know what you're saying, and Alex, hopefully, Alex, you will back me up if you're still watching the show, and I know that Rangers fans would say, well, I win in the league, win in the treble and beat Celtic, and Celtic fans would say the same thing about Rangers and all that as well, Ethan. But, Rangers would really be beating teams outside of Celtic as well, like what Robbie was picking up a minute ago. And I think it's a bit, I don't want to say the word ignorant of Celtic and Rangers fans just ignoring like Dundee and Hibs and sorry, Robbie, like St Mirren and all that, because like you've got to beat these teams to win the league. Like you just can't beat Celtic 4 times and say, yes, we've won the league. Because, well, no, you haven't, because you've scored points against Mirren, Dundee, Kilmarnock, and the rest. So I don't know if it's the old firm being a bit snobby there against each other or whatever, but every time they say that, it's like, well, yeah, it's good to beat Rangers, it's good to beat Celtic, but you've got to beat the other teams as well.
Yeah, and I think the problem last season with Rangers wasn't the squad or the skills of the players. It was the mentality of just grinding out wins against teams they should be beating. And you can sign the best players. Rangers could sign £5-10 million players, but there's still a second place mentality in that dressing room of that you can go out and just, we'll just limber up to the game at the weekend at Motherwell, and they'll never win the league. But Russell Martin seemed very strong, and that he knows that he needs to get rid of that mentality. He's identified early that that's been the problem at Rangers for years, and he looks like he's doing something about it. And so that would be a massive sort of, it's certainly a massive sign to me that he kind of knows what he's doing, and that he's taking the right steps. He's taking the steps in the right direction with that squad. Because ultimately Rangers have had a better squad than all 10 other teams in the league for years, but it doesn't always translate that way, and it should. But yeah, that's been the problem, and they need to address that.
Go back to 2 seasons ago when Rangers were top of the league. I can't remember how many points it was by, but they played Dundee and Ross County in the space of 5 days, and they 2 games single-handedly lost Rangers the league. You know, Michael, you were saying Rangers can't afford to, be too, we're going to go up and stroll this game up at these places. Russell Martin knows now he needs to look at these games as a real danger, and needs to take them seriously, because it is where Rangers have historically slipped in the last couple of seasons. Think about how close the title picture could have looked last season if Rangers didn't drop points to St Mirren and Dundee and all these other places. And after the wins they got against Celtic, you could only imagine how closer they could have been if they could win all these games against the other sort of 10 teams in the league.
Was that another season as well, Robbie, that Motherwell went to Ibrox and beat them 3-0 or something? And I remember, was that another season St Mirren was 2-1 up at one point, and I'm sorry to remind you of it, but Rangers won, was it 4-2 as well that day as well? So, I mean, it's you've got to be consistent to kind of win the league as well. And all right, we can talk Rangers up to the hilt tonight, but we can talk them up, and then it can fall down on Saturday.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and say Gassama and Ant-Man had a good game. Adams looked comfortable at right back, but until we see them again domestically, we don't know. How many times in the past if Rangers had good starts, or even Celtic going back a number of years ago. I look at that season where Rangers won the league, and obviously it was very different circumstances. But how many times have these teams had good starts and then it's all just started to crumble? I go back to 2 seasons ago when Rangers were top of the league by 5 or 6 points or whatever it was. Suddenly, just with 2 games against Dundee and Ross County, and the title hopes completely slipped at the horns. So it can happen so quickly.
Yeah, that was the not last season, but the season before. That was the moral victory, and famous game against Celtic, the 3-3 match. But yeah, I think I completely agree with what both of you are saying. Rangers just need to become consistent domestically, because as of late they've been consistently inconsistent.
Yeah, no, definitely. And but I mean, going back to the game tonight, as we spoke about for the past about on the show, I mean, we're not trying to talk down Rangers, we're trying to talk up Rangers, especially in European football. But also, as I always speak about Robbie on the show, that it's good for Rangers, good for Rangers Football Club, good for the fans and all the rest of it, but good for Scottish football as well.
Aye, it always is good for Scottish football. You get it every season where you speak to Celtic fans and they don't want Rangers to win, and vice versa in Europe. And from a neutral standpoint anyway, looking on the teams in Europe, I want every team to do well. There's nothing more I'd love to see than Dundee United to take out the Austrian Giants when they play them, Hibs to take out the team they're playing, and then obviously, we were speaking about it pre-show, obviously it looks like it could be Liga Warsaw they take on, who are historically always sort of in around Europe. So there's not many I'd love to see personally than all these teams qualify for European competition. It would be absolutely amazing for the league. Getting a taste of Europe on my own team, there's nothing more I'd love to see in the coefficient go up and more spots get guaranteed to these teams. And our Scottish clubs do better in Europe. 'Cause it's something that, let's be honest, historically we've not done very well outside of Rangers and Celtic. So it's something that I always love to see when teams are doing well in Europe.
Yep. So my thanks to Robbie and Ethan for joining us tonight, and Regan early on as well. He came on as a sub. I think he got a yellow card, so that's why I had to go early. So brilliant win tonight for Rangers. We will see what they do at the weekend, and obviously it's Tuesday in the second leg as well against Viktoria Plzeň. And so good night for Rangers tonight. 3-0 at home, and we'll be back on Friday with the usual preview for the weekend. So thanks for watching the show.
You're watching the Scottish Football Zone with all the build-up and reactions